Hello, I'm Jo, and I'm joined by Madoka and Salah from One to One Collective, and we're here today to talk about what makes a studio, and to discuss collaboration, collectives, community work. So could I get you to introduce yourselves and introduce One to One?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, I'm Salah.
I'm Madoka.
Yeah, so we're One to One Collective. We're an architectural design and make collective formed from Kingston University alumni. We all sort of studied architecture at different sort of parts, but we all crossed paths on the architecture course. And yeah, I guess we kind of primarily architectural focused, but we're quite interested in everything design related. And we have a sort of quite a strong focus on kind of community, sustainability, and collaborative making and designing.
Yeah, kind of said that quite well. And yeah, just also like a focus on like trying to, I guess, explore also like our own like different cultures within the studio, and trying to, especially like with sustainable materials, like testing like traditional making techniques and things like that. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. I actually, on my way up, was doing a bit of reading about you. I read on your website that your name, One to One, kind of formed through partly to do with scale model making, but also about one-to-one conversation. So it's really nice to have you here for a one-to-one conversation.
Nice, yeah, pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so the format of this is that we will be asking each other some questions that Honey's kindly written for us. So I think we'll get going. I'll start, if that's all right?
Yeah.
So what did the word studio culture mean to you?
You go.
I guess for us is having a sort of opportunity to work around not just individuals but a collective, which hence the kind of one-to-one collective. But yeah, having a place to sort of bounce back ideas, learn from one another, and I think we always talk about learning from one another, not just creatively or architecturally or anything like that, but also culturally, because we find that sort of really helps feed into the creative aspects and how we practice as a collective and as a studio.
And like at uni, we were always in studio. So like a lot of the projects we started off doing were like with Takeshi. So like a lot of one-to-one builds and stuff like that. So we saw the benefit of being together, like in the same space, like eating together, all that kind of stuff. It's not always work related. It has to be like, for us, it's a lifestyle kind of thing. Like we chill with each other, like we do different things with each other. It's not just the work. So it kind of helps the work like flow a bit better as well.
I mean, you were just telling me that the studio workshop space that you're based in sounds amazing. It's a lot more than just a workshop, for the sounds of it.
Yeah, so we're based in, we call it the Farm of Futures. It's based at the Tolworth Main Allotments. It was an abandoned sort of shed. I think it was once the Tolworth Allotments Society kind of building, and they used to sort of sell things like fertilizer and soil and stuff before all that stuff became sort of easily accessible and all the B&Qs and stuff like that. And then it was just used as a sort of storage facility for years and years. And this was we came across it through the Community Brain, who are a community interest company based in Kingston. They're sort of responsible for a range of sort of community festivals. They're based on the belief that sort of everyone is brilliant if they're given a platform to be brilliant. So they sort of support all kinds of members of the community through festivals, and they're sort of responsible for a lot of community-led interventions as well within the built environment. So yeah, the farm itself is kind of our base.
Yeah, and so we have chickens. we have some local honey there. So we have a beekeeper, Anne, who like takes care of the bees, and then we have Pam, who takes care of the chickens, and then we have an aquaponic system there. So we're learning about like growing food indoors and stuff like that. And like over time we've been kind of fixing up the space. So like with the upcycling thing, for example, we'll like depending on who like contacts us, like Reba might contact us and say that we have these materials here. So we'll take those and then we'll start like fixing the farm up using that kind of stuff. So it's consistently like changing, thankfully, because being in the same space would kind of be dreadful. But yeah, it's one of those places that, like right now we're going into winter, so we're trying to figure out how we're going to be warm in there. So
Yeah.
we put a fireplace in there, and we have a couple of electric heaters. But it is like a dirty space. It's really raw, but everyone feels like they can mess up in there. They can spill paint on the floor, and no one really cares about it, and so that's kind of good for us.
I feel like a pristine white studio is just not necessarily the most creative work environment.
Yeah, exactly. And then for us, I guess the name, the sort of Farm of Futures, we always say it's about sort of literal farming, like having the chickens and the bees and the planting space and stuff, but also farming ideas or startups or creatives, but also farming kind of waste to actual, most of the time, products that go back into the community. So let's say street furniture or planters in train stations and things like that. So a lot of the time we get lots of waste stuff in, and then we reprocess that, and it kind of feeds back into the community.
And also, like, the being in an allotment, you start, like, everyone just passes by, and like you get into these like interesting like conversations with people. So like for example, there's Digimap. I don't know if you've heard of it. So it's like where you can get like site plans and stuff like that. And I met one of the allotmenteers, worked for Digimap.
Yeah.
And he used to like go around all the spaces, like actually like measuring and stuff like that. So it's interesting the different characters you start to meet when you're in a place like that.
Physically rooted in the space. Oh, that's nice. Do you want to go ahead? Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on the following statement? Collaboration is intrinsic to being a designer.
Ooh. I mean, I think it is. I think it's quite rare, I guess, unless you're designing something purely for yourself, it's quite rare that you're not encountering other people or places or beings. So I think it is intrinsic, the need to work with other people, whether that be designing something for them or doing some work with them. I mean, for me personally as a designer, I prefer to work with people than alone. I find I completely slightly lose my mind when I'm doing a project that's like not got enough influence of other people, because you can just start debating the tiniest details and forget what's important.
So when, I guess you guys as kind of product and furniture graduates now, congratulations, how does that often work with you guys? Because you often have sort of individual projects, but I'm assuming there's sort of a lot of collaboration within the learning process.
Yeah, massively. I think especially this year, we've just completed our degree, for anyone who doesn't know. And we were all working on individual projects, but we had this one collective project, which was this show that we're in right now at Oxton Archers. And that really united us, because we kind of had to work on that collaboratively at the same time as doing our individual projects. And then what we would find, because we were sharing that time together, we were also starting to influence each other in our individual projects. So just by sharing a space and kind of being friends through other reasons, we would just, I think we felt more comfortable to criticize people's design decisions or propose changes, which I think was really valuable. And I hope is something that we continue to be able to kind of influence one another through our work, even if we're not working in the same space. Do you think that space is important, the physical space?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, especially like during COVID, when we weren't able to get into the farm, it was difficult. We noticed the change in the team. Yeah. Because you're not seeing each other. You're not like just seeing someone's like physical movements or their expressions, or like it's a different thing. And especially when a lot of time for the farm is a case of you have to be there. It makes a big difference. So like now that we're all able to like be there, like it's beneficial for the farm. It's beneficial for like our heads, our mental space. Like the work is flowing really well. So yeah.
Was that something you knew was quite important to you when you left Kingston, that you wanted to be in space working alongside other people?
Yeah, I think absolutely, yeah. As I'm sure you all know, but the workshop is sort of such an important space in the university, and I think that's either the workshop, or for us, we had home studios
Yeah.
And that's where we spent a lot of our time through our education, whether it was in the workshop, collectively making, or individually making, but being around each other, or being in home studios working again. Could be working on group projects or could be working on individual projects, but that was a time where you might walk past someone's work and see a beautiful model and be inspired to make your own model, or have a nice conversation about something, or be able to bounce back ideas with people. And stuff. So being in a physical space, I guess we've always kind of wanted that, and fortunate to be able to have access to this kind of farm and stuff. But I guess we've also been sort of this idea of being a collective. We're also quite curious and always been interested in testing how do you do things if you don't have access to a space, or if someone is part of the collective but they're also, far away.
In a different place.
And so communication is probably the first step, like being able to communicate, but then we also realize that actually without having a physical space, it also makes it a little bit difficult to communicate or collaborate.
It's definitely another challenge.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go ahead with another. Name 3 things from your studio that you can't live without, and why?
The fire.
Especially in the coming months.
The people.
That's a nice answer. Very
Well
topical.
done,
I don't know.
I'm completely copying an answer from someone yesterday here, but I think a scalpel is a extremely surprisingly useful thing that when you find yourself without one, you suddenly desperately need it.
Yeah, scalpel will definitely be up there. I think for us, probably the festool.
Yeah.
The festool circular saw. We've had that for a few years now, and it's just it's made our making projects, or even if we're making things for the farm or renovating things or building workshop vents and stuff. I think the festool is probably our key tool. That's our most precious tool, the circular festool
Always
saw.
with you.
So that's probably the one thing that we would struggle to make things without, or we would have struggled in the past to complete some of our projects without it.
But you realize that you can really do whatever you want to do. With whatever you have, you need some basic stuff. I think, for me, that's the thing that I always remember about Kenya. Is you go around and you always see people making do with what they have.
Yeah.
So if you put that limitation on yourself and say that, okay, I need this, I need this, I need this, then it's going to be difficult. So we started off with not that much. And we were still able to make stuff. We just figure out how to do it.
And sometimes you kind of find much more creative ways to solve problems when you don't have. I mean, this is a kind of silly example, but leaving uni, we suddenly no longer have an Adobe license, and I'm desperately trying to figure out how to crop a photograph because I've become so dependent on it. So.
That was it, and we've hacked loads of sort of tools, or had to make sort of makeshift plungers for the drills to use as pillar drills and stuff at times. But that's also been quite a fun thing.
Bodging together something.
So I mean, you spend a lot of time watching YouTube videos of hacking things and test things out, and if they don't work, it's fine. We'll figure something else out.
So how do we maintain a healthy studio work-life balance?
That's the challenge, isn't it? I don't know if I'm very good at this yet. I think this year I worked alongside my degree, and in a way I found that actually quite helpful, because there was time where I had to not be thinking about work. And I think because I was in a way busier, I then said, no, you have to take time off as well. But I don't know if that's a very good answer to a healthy work-life balance.
I think most creators probably struggle answering that question. I think we've improved on it, definitely. I think the first sort of 2 to 3 years, as expected, we probably didn't really have that balance.
Yeah.
I think we spent, so the 3 of us who sort of set up, Madoka, myself and Pablo, we spent a lot of time together, but as Madoka sort of said earlier, it was a lifestyle thing, so it was very much everything that we did, whether it was social or anything, still revolved sort of around one-to-one in a way.
Yeah.
But I mean, me and Madoka still live together, so we spend a lot of time together. But we've learned over the years, so sort of when we're back at home in the evenings, to just not really talk about work, talk about other things and stuff.
Switch off from it.
Naturally, sometimes the conversations just end up.
Yeah.
Or we're so busy throughout the day that we don't get a chance to catch up with each other about work. So then the evening is the only time we do it. So
Yeah.
I think we've improved on it, but we can probably work on that a little bit better.
And sometimes it's nice, like when you're so kind of absorbed in it and it's really on the mind, but sometimes it's kind of tips over the balance and it's like, no, I'm too absorbed and can't get out of this now. So
yeah, but again, I guess it's that typical thing that people always say, that if you do enjoy what you're doing and you're really passionate about it, then it doesn't feel always like work. But also it is important to just be able to switch off.
Yeah.
Because, we realize that if we continue at this pace and just do this forever, then at some point there'll probably be a little breaking point.
Yeah, and you definitely don't necessarily come up with the most creative ideas or do the most interesting work when it's a constant flow of it. You can get very stuck in a cycle, I think. All right. What is your personal ethos and inspiration? Do you or do One-to-One have a manifesto of sorts?
Not like a written manifesto. I guess we have probably like an untold manifesto in some way. But I guess the ethos is probably, again, as we mentioned, to sort of probably enjoy what we do is one of the biggest things. And that comes with its challenges at times. But I guess it's, again, for us, it's always the bigger picture. So you might do something, as we were talking about kind of before this, that you might do something because you know you need to do it for its financial benefit to then help free you up for other things. So it might be something that you're not kind of like, okay, this is the passion project I want to be on. But because the big picture is there and you know you're doing it for a certain reason, then it makes it enjoyable because you're not thinking of, oh, I'm just doing this right now for this week or for these 2 weeks, but you know that I'm doing it for the greater good of like the collective kind of thing.
How do you then ensure, like as a collective of, you said 6-ish people, how do you ensure that you stay doing work that you collectively want to be working on?
I feel like it kind of just comes sometimes. Like we're chatting yesterday and it was like I was trying to think of like, okay, what would be better? But like fortunately, diverse things keep coming, and it's also because you put yourself in those places sometimes. Like you're going and chatting to different people, like so you start to get into those conversations that you kind of want to be in. So fortunately, the work has been diverse, but of course, there's things you have to do that you don't necessarily want to do, and it's finding the passion in that side of stuff as well. Like, for example, I've been grinding through some building regs recently, but it's been really cool because like typically like I do mostly like the making stuff. So the architecture stuff is mainly done by Yasir and Francesca. But it's been really nice like learning off them. Because like that's the thing, it becomes this like consistent loop of like when we were doing the rammed earth plinths, like 2 of us are kind of focused on learning about it, and then everyone will come and join on maybe like 2 or 3 days to come and like learn about it. So that transfer of information, especially when you're doing it as friends, and like when you're doing it in like a chill like vibe, it's a bit easier to get the information. When if it's like this like pressured situation, then that's tricky. So like also like making sure that our timelines don't create those pressure points are gonna happen, but it's making them as little as possible.
So you founded One-to-One after graduating from Kingston, and did you quite quickly find kind of roles that you all fell into within the group, or did it take some time to sort of?
Yeah, I think naturally we sort of did find our own roles. Just again, we probably picked that stuff up while we were at uni. So when we do live build projects, you know, you naturally all kind of take up different roles. Whether you're the kind of workshop manager, construction manager, you're project managing it or whatever. So we kind of all understood our skills and qualities, and then having a trust in each other to sort of back that. I know this guy's doing this, and that's what they're good at. So I'll do my thing, and then we know that it's all going to fit together. And then just kind of tracking back a little bit to the types of projects we bring in and stuff. I think we, as a collective, we're very open. So if someone's very passionate about taking something on, then most of the time we support that. We go, right, if you've got that passion to take that on, then let's do it. And you've got the support of the rest of us when you need, if you need. So sometimes there'll be an individual sort of carrying a project because that's their passion project, and maybe they've got a link to that client or that network and stuff. And then at points we always kind of bounce back off each other and stuff anyways, but at points if that person needs support, or that those 2 or 3, as Madoka said, need support,
Yeah.
and the rest of us jump in and support that. So we're very open as to what kind of projects are, and it's that thing, if someone goes, actually I'm really interested in doing this, or I'd love to do this project, then I don't think we've ever been like, no, we don't think that's good for us, because it's that thing, if you're enjoying it, then it keeps everyone happy.
That's super refreshing to hear, because I think quite often people go into like being tiny fish in big sea and find that they lose much creative direction, but it sounds like you guys have got quite a lot of opportunity to seek out the work that you're interested in.
Yeah, and I think we basically, we're because I kind of mentioned this earlier about the pandemic and stuff, but because we're so open to what we do, like that, the kind of range of what kind of projects come our way, we're all quite curious about them anyway. So we're not like, this is what we're interested in and this is what we want to be. And that might change in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. We might go, actually, this is now, after trying all these things,
this is what we
want to be. But at this stage, I think we're just like, everything seems interesting to us. So we're like, why not try it all and see what happens.
Nice.
And also, like, back in the day, we'd like just take in everything. And then that's when you start like working overload. Yeah. And like, so now, like Salah does most of the like management.
Yeah.
So he'll tell us like, okay, this is our timelines and stuff like this. This is what resource we have.
Yeah.
So if this is coming in, we might not be able to do it. So like, we're trying to be also smart about things, not just like...
That's a big thing to learn though, isn't it? When to say no to something. And
yeah. I think only in recent years we've turned things down.
Right.
At the start, we were just taking everything on. Also, we're very fortunate to be in that position, to be having enough things on to be able to say, actually, we can't take this on, or we don't want to take this on.
I guess that ties back to finding a healthy work-life balance as well, though.
Absolutely.
Is realizing when you've got enough work on. And
Okay, so what was the last thing that excited you about the design industry?
It's a difficult question. I mean, this morning I went to a show that's in London Design Festival called Material Matters at the Oxo Tower. And an industrial design studio called Pearson Lloyd were exhibiting some information about the work they do. And it's a lot of kind of generic industrial design, to be honest. But it was refreshing because they're quite transparent about the sustainable decisions that they've made in that design. So there's proper statistics and a lot of transparency in the material choices and the construction methods that have been used. And I think within that context, you quite often don't see that level of transparency. So it was refreshing to see that.
Oh, amazing. That sounds interesting.
How about you guys?
For me, it's I think there's, with like sustainable design and things like that, it feels like we're starting to like go back in like to our natural like building techniques, like these traditional building techniques, where I think the research that's going into that is really, really interesting. And it means that we can play with like materials that are more like natural to us, like clay and earth and things like that. So
and local materials.
So it's like we went to Ebuki studios where we learned, he was teaching us about Ram Death, and whenever we'd pass by there, he'd show us his different like tests of like clay with hay and things like that, his percentages and stuff. So it's quite interesting how deep people are going into this, and it actually looks like it's going to be applicable in the UK, because for example with Ram Death, it's typically like in hot countries. Yeah. But it could be possible for it to like work really well here as well, because it is being used, but it could be used in a bigger way. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Have you got anything that excited you recently?
I think kind of, I guess, like to add on to that, I think for me, a lot of the time, it's also absorbing what people pick up interest in for us as a collective. So for example, that moment that Madoka talked about was then intrigued me into doing things. And then most of the time we kind of then draw inspiration from each other, from his sort of excitement and his passion about the round earth making. Then I was like really fascinated by it. So I wasn't meant to be heavily involved in that, but then all of a sudden I found myself ramming earth and then growing sort of my interest. And I think that's the one thing about this kind of studio culture or the collective, that is great, because whatever someone picks up an interest in, all of a sudden it translates to the others, or
Yeah.
it might not necessarily translate to everyone, but it will translate to
Yeah.
others. We picked up interest into like, you know, shelter after disaster or refugee housing,
Yeah.
and things like that through Francesca, for example, and then all of a sudden that's really inspiring. It's like, oh, how can we input into that
Yeah.
to improve that sort of industry, and how can you bring design to these things
Yeah.
and actually make them more humane? So yeah, I think we constantly sort of, I find for me drawing inspiration from people around me, from when they pick up interest in things.
Yeah, I know
And I
exactly.
think that's what makes the kind of studio culture super important.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you. All right. This is one for you explicitly. What does part of being a collective mean to you?
I think it's for us really. I feel like it's a friend. It's difficult to separate work and life.
Yeah.
So making sure that, like, for example, Salah and I live together. We've lived together for how many years?
I don't know, man.
For
5, 6.
yeah, like 6 years. And working and living together is not the easiest thing, you know, but we've managed to do it for this long. And I think it's also like it's that understanding of people, and like, for example, we've never put out something like for people to come and work for us. It has always been a thing of like people have come to the farm, started like doing something there, and then we've had a job that would work for them,
Right.
and then that's how they've come in.
Yeah.
So with us, I think it is that thing of like that mutual understanding
Yeah.
of like, and we're also all from cultures that like eating together and things like that are very important. So I think for me that's what it is. It's that like that friendship group that friendship group.
Yeah, and it just makes it enjoyable.
Yeah.
Like most of the time it feels like we're just friends doing things really than like working. And then I think confidence is definitely a big thing. I think if we, as individuals, we probably all say like I'd never take risks as I would.
Right.
But then just being around people that just go, yeah, we can do that.
Taking
and
a
then,
risk
like, we'll do
collectively.
it, or like I know that this person's got this skill set and then this person's got this skill set. So together, we've got like that confidence about us, which I think definitely, I know for me as an individual, and I know we've all spoken about this, but as individuals, you wouldn't feel as confident.
Yeah.
Because you know you've all got like your skill sets together, and that makes you way stronger. So I think confidence is a big thing that comes from like being a collective rather than being individuals.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Don't worry about it.
What are your thoughts on the following statement? Design education is accessible.
I think it depends what form of design education. I think, as you were just talking about, we can be educated in design through anything around us and anyone around us. And I think in that regard, design is so lovely because, or you can get onto YouTube and you can learn how to hack a machine, or, you know, I think design is accessible in that respect when you learn to have confidence to have a go at something. I think the kind of formal design education routes are less accessible financially, especially in the UK. And also there's definitely barriers to many types of people, which I hope will change, but I don't know. I don't think it's the most accessible, but I think that is true of a lot of higher education forms. I think design, I don't know if you guys felt this on architecture, but I think within our course it felt quite difficult because there were a lot of resources that could be bought for our course, which meant a lot of money input. Yeah. So in that respect, I think there was quite a lot of inequality, which is perhaps not felt to such a degree in some other courses. But of course, it's all influenced by so many factors. So yeah, I don't think formal design education is necessarily the most accessible thing, but I think there are interesting moves within primary education that is making design a more approachable subject.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because even if you do gain access to it, then the system sometimes makes it difficult to then continue your like path through design education. So I agree that I think it is improving, but there's a lot more that can be done to help improve it, diversify it, and be more open as to what design can be.
Yeah.
And like we all teach now.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's coming from, like, we all studied, of course, and then now we're on the other side. And like, fortunately, like, for example, like Kingston or UAL, they've taken this chance on people who have just come into the industry and are doing their own thing, which is, like, you can see that positive movement forward.
Yeah.
And also, like, seeing it from the other side, it is very tricky. Like, for example, the strikes that happened recently, and like when we're not united, like, with each other,
Yeah.
it's then tricky for things to move positively forward, because
Yeah.
like, I was involved in the strike, and for the teachers, it's like making a statement saying that, like, in my eyes, that you deserve more. You're giving something to the public. And for the students, their prices are just hiking up, and they're not now getting these teaching days, which
Yeah.
hurts for us as well.
Yeah.
You know, because
Yeah.
you're thinking, like, oh damn, I'm not giving that. You know, but I think if it's such a tricky topic, and it's something that we're always talking about. But I think there's things moving forward in certain areas, and there's things that need to be pushed further in
Yeah.
other areas.
Yeah.
And if we support each other, then things can be a bit easier.
Yeah.
And
Completely.
over time, I think it's going to get better. I hope anyway, it's getting better. Yeah.
Fingers crossed to that.
Yeah.
All right, another one. What is the best studio or collaborative working experience you've ever had? Is there any kind of particular project you could talk about that was just really enjoyable or really productive? Or
I think, Madoka, you touched up on this recently, but we recently made these rammed earth plinths
Yeah.
for an exhibition in the Design Museum, and I think at times it was probably like one of the most stressful things, but I think also over time, just kind of reflecting on it now as I speak, those most stressful projects were probably also the funnest or the most enjoyable, probably because they've also given us the biggest kind of learning curves.
right.
For example, the rammed earth plinths, it started off with Madoka and Arj being sort of in control of it, absorbing lots of information from various sources, and Roland and his team and stuff, and then passing that on, transferring that knowledge onto the rest of us. It was very kind of physically labor intensive. We were all like kind of popping our shoulders and blisters and stuff. And then there was a moment where the storm came in out of nowhere, and we had all these plinths drying outside, and it was really hectic trying to move them indoors and trying to protect them from the rain and stuff. But then that made everyone from the collective sort of come in the next day so that we can remake plinths and do it.
gosh.
And so all of a sudden the next day there was about 6 of us in there. There was even friends that weren't really part of the kind of core team that were in there. And then it was everyone in kind of working together. And all of a sudden that day we were in the workshop till about 11 p.m. But everyone was sort of having a really good time, and it was all kind of smiles and happy and good vibes and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably been the same case, I'd say.
Yeah.
Like those most stressful times end up being some of the best times.
Yeah, especially when you're doing that collectively, because I think when you're really stressed alone, it's like, how do I get through this? But when you've got other people who are also really stressed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the kind of nice thing about, like, I always find it tricky to like say that this is my favorite project, because all throughout all of them, we've learned so many different things,
Yeah.
and we've gone through so many different things in them. So, but like, yeah, recently it has been this one.
Yeah, I guess as you say, it's like, I guess for us, it's in a sense like one-to-one is a project.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
favorite project, because
Yeah.
whatever we do is always that, as I mentioned earlier, like the learning curve. So whatever we do that feels like we progress to the next stage is super enjoyable. So yeah, it's hard to kind of pinpoint a
Yeah.
specific thing, but that was like the most recent thing that we did. And there was that moment for me where everyone was just in there grafting, but everyone was sort of happy, and it was such nice vibes.
Yeah.
Even though it was like a stressful situation,
Yeah.
we were working till like 11 p.m. But yeah.
Yeah.
And that's again the good thing about the collective,
Yeah.
like being there to support each other and stuff.
Okay, nice. Well, we've just had the signal from Honey. So are there any questions from the audience here, or any questions online? If not, I've got some questions in my back pocket for... Honey's got a question. Go on then.
What advice would you have for anyone who's starting a collective or is just coming out of uni and wants to be part of that sort of collaborative environment instead of going into a more traditional working environment?
So just to say that in case the people online didn't hear, what advice would you have for starting a collective or leaving uni and wanting to work in a collaborative environment? How would you, what advice do you have?
I would say like start, and don't put that pressure on yourself of it working. You know, just really go with the flow, and just give yourselves that time to learn about each other, and be patient with each other, because we were chatting with Sally, and it was the one thing that we have argued so many times. We have been we would always go to the farm, turn on the fire, get a bottle of wine, and go through our shit. Sorry. But we knew that the business is our baby, so that was the thing we cared about. So if it's that passion, if you know that you all care about this one thing, then it makes things a bit easier.
So getting equal investment, as it were.
Yeah, I back that. Take the risk, because I remember when we first thought about the idea of setting this up and things, and we reached out to Jim Reed and Takeshi Ayatsu, who were our tutors at the time for masters, and they both we were basically thinking, oh, they're going to say this is a silly idea, go and get jobs and then do this later on. But they both kind of went, take the risk. They were if we could have set up our own practices when we were in our 20s or early 30s or whatever, we would have, because you're just going to end up with more pressures in life as you get older. So for us, it was okay, well, we can take risks now. We don't mind sort of taking risks, not having a huge kind of financial benefit from it yet. And so, I think my advice is always just take the risk. Speak to people, because more often than not, you're going to find people are going to be very helpful and will advise you, and people will be willing to sort of collaborate and bounce back with you and guide you.
I think that's something that quite a lot of us have found recently, that people are very willing to give a small amount of their time to just give some advice, and it's easy to forget to ask for that sometimes.
Yeah.
And if it fails, it's fine.
Yeah.
You've learned something during that period that you would have not learned. So,
Cool. Any other questions? All right, I will ask my question then. To close it up, what do you have any hopes for the future or the upcoming years for one-to-one or for design in general?
Interesting. I think for one-to-one, I guess we don't have any specific ambitions per se, because as I mentioned earlier, we're quite keen on just learning a lot of things and stuff. But I suppose for one-to-one, it's about stabilizing ourselves, learning how to deal with the things that you don't often deal with as a creative better, finances, management, all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's sort of one thing that is a kind of a near future target. And for design in general, I think we've all kind of touched up on it a little bit, but it's that kind of idea of diversifying design culture, how we view what is good design, what's not good design, and especially with the design education, sort of really kind of pushing that idea of making it accessible but also diverse and inclusive.
Yeah, and I guess it's we for a lot of the time we worked in the business, we would say, rather than on the business. So right now it's about kind of stabilizing everything. Yeah. Because I think we've also fluctuated quite a lot in the company. People have come, people have gone, and we've learned from all that. Yeah. So I think right now we want to just really make sure that everything that we've been learning is working now. Now we can set it into practice in a sense. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for everyone for coming, and anyone watching online, we are still open at this show until the end of today and tomorrow morning, so do come along to Oxon Arches.
Thank you.